but transactions just don't happen. There's a personality, there's a candor, and ultimately you got to know when to push and when to pull. And to these four gentlemen's credit, they knew that and they got it. And that's why the transaction happened and happened very successfully. In terms of my involvement or the law firm's involvement, Matt and John, Mike used the term, had the emotional intelligence to get involved early, to get us involved early. You really want to get your ducks in line when you're selling. You generally only get one good bite of the apple, so you want to make sure that you get the best bite you can. And they got us involved early because when you're setting up what is the letter of intent, that's the roadmap for the transaction. You want to make sure that you get the key terms and conditions and considerations into that LOI. Because as a selling party, you want to make sure you know as early as you can whether or not you have a deal. Because obviously there's a fair amount of effort and time and cost that go involved, and distraction, big distraction, gets involved with respect to selling business. You also have to continue to run your business. So they got us involved very early. And to their credit, again, and this is true, they had their ducks in line. There wasn't a lot of cleanup that we had to do, so to speak, or positioning to get them ready to sell, because of course the buying party wants to look at, while it's great to have a gut feeling and everything is feel good, ultimately they want to verify that what they think they're buying is actually there. So I'll give you an example of a situation that I'm working on now that sort of highlights this. I'm working with a seller that has 14 stockholders, and to their chagrin, they didn't have a stockholders agreement at the outset. So they went out and raised capital and funds from friends and family and gave people little pieces of equity in their business, 1% here and 2% there. And that seemed great and it worked. But now they want to sell. And in transactions of this nature, generally they're equity transactions. So buyers want to grab 100% of the equity. Well, in this case, you can't force people to sell. So suddenly now 1% stockholder without a stockholders agreement, very important document, has leverage or undue leverage where they shouldn't have that. So my answer is these guys got us involved early and they had their ducks in line. Sure, thanks, Mark. Risk. As a lawyer, our job, your lawyer's job, is to manage risk. And what does that mean? I mean, there's risk in your entrepreneurs, and many of your entrepreneurs, by definition, you take risk, or you have to take risk to grow your business. So managing risk, from my perspective, the way I interpret that is I have to educate my clients as to what the risk is and what the repercussions could be. And in the end, it's their job to say, Mike, I don't care about that risk, or I really care about that risk. And that's really my job. In terms of, and what I always say is you never want to have the legal outweigh the practical. I mean, listen, you can draft the tightest agreement ever that's bulletproof perhaps, but if the other party, and Dick, you alluded to this, doesn't perform, you're still in the same place. So risk allocation, risk management is really important. Both parties have risk in a transaction of this sort, but from the sell side, two pieces to highlight. One, when you sell your business, and some of you may have sold businesses before, you set up a business and you set up a legal entity. Everyone has a legal entity, of course. And the reason why you set that up is because, as owners, you don't want to be personally liable for the risk of your business. But when you sell your business, inevitably, the owners have to put their names on the dotted line. Personally liable. So risk becomes that much more important. It's probably the only time in your business life cycle that really you're personally on the line, unless you voluntarily put your name on a personal guarantee or something along those lines. Second thing, disclosure, which is really counterintuitive. Disclosure is your friend in a transaction of this sort. Usually you keep your information tight to the vest. When you're selling your business and you know you're moving forward, you want to disclose. The buyer wants to know and you want to tell them. So the good, the bad, and the ugly. That forms the basis of knowledge, and therefore the intent is to perhaps transfer some of that risk over to the buy side. So personal liability and managing risk is important, but disclosure, which is counterintuitive, is very important in a sale transaction.
Mike, Jim, yeah.
I was just going to add that in this case, I don't think there was a lot of hands-on diligence in terms of exchanging of information. These guys can comment. But to your point, there are times when, of course, you want to ask for financials. Depending on how the transaction is structured, if there's a lot of cash that may be coming behind or later in the transaction, you want to, of course, from the sell side, be able to verify the buyer has the capability to pay and to make good on his promises. Because, of course, you have a lot on the line once you sell your business and you transfer control. So doing some diligence, you have to kind of get a feel for your relationship with the buyer and the trust factor, but it's not wrong from the sell side, your question is a good one, to do some limited due diligence. Let me add one sidebar as an offshoot to Mike's team approach. What I'm seeing in the marketplace, a lot of acquisitions, of course, but I'm seeing a lot of combinations of equals. Smaller businesses in the marketplace view their ability to compete as getting together with their friends. So instead of it being an acquisition where one company fully absorbs the other, it's a merger where they're together able to compete effectively. So two businesses that would get together. So I see a lot of that I didn't see before now happening in the marketplace. Sure. Every buyer wants to, they have to verify, right? So they want to come in, they want to talk to your customers, and they want to talk to your employees. We can't have that on the sell side because of the risk attendant risk of the deal getting out there. And I've had situations like Marty you've referenced where we went to get consents and the prime spilled the deal, and they just can't have that happen. And I remember some of the instances that Dick references where he would say, you know, trust us. And I'd say, well, I think to myself, I'm a lawyer, we don't trust anybody, so we can't trust you. But it comes down to trust in the end, because at a certain point in time, from a sell side and from a buy side, you're all in. I mean, you just can't go back, and you do have to trust. And I've come to learn that, you know, that these gentlemen are men of integrity, and you know what they say, they do. But from a confidential point of view, you do the best you can to manage the situation, to move the transaction along as fast as you can, because after the ownership, your key employees are really the key to the value driver or differentiator in the transaction. So you need them to come along, you need them to be part of it, but you can't necessarily, and sometimes they're required to come along as a condition to your transaction. So it's a real push-pull, and it's a real nuance, and there's no cookie-cutter way of doing it. You just got to have a feel. Of course, you use confidentiality arrangements, NDAs, you may use retention agreements and bonus scenarios, and we use all those tools, but in the end, it does come down to trust.